Because here's the thing, like, the narratives that surround Caitlin Clark are just really interesting. You know, the idea that she's protected by the league, the idea that everyone's going after her because she's been so heavily promoted, which, listen, the promotion of Caitlin Clark, based on what she did in college, I think is fairly justified. She was doing incredible stuff over there, and I didn't love this aspect. I understood, but I didn't love this aspect. I felt like when Caitlin Clark first got in the league, and it wasn't just her, other young people that were getting in the league at the time, a lot of new eyeballs were coming over to the W, and it seemed like there was a little bit of the old guard that was relatively annoyed by the new kids coming into the school.
There is a spot on the floor that should genuinely terrify every defender in the WNBA. For most players, it is too deep. For most coaches, it is a bad shot. For most defenses, it is where possessions go to die. But for Caitlin Clark, that spot is where the defense starts panicking. Because when she crosses half court, the game changes. Not at the three-point line, not at the wing, not when she gets into the paint. The second she steps over the logo, defenders have to make a decision. Do we pick her up now? Do we back up? Do we send help? Do we switch? Do we trap? And that is the problem. By the time a defender is asking those questions, Caitlin Clark has already won the possession.
It's perfectly constructed. I do believe that, you want Caitlin Clark's the best pick and roll player in the league. You want to stretch four. This Indiana roster hasn't been constructed to give her the most space possible, in my opinion.
In all of our opinion, Ryan.
This is why she is a nightmare to guard. It is not just because she shoots deep. Plenty of players can shoot. It is not just because she passes. Plenty of guards can pass. It is not just because she plays fast. Plenty of players are quick. It is because she does all of it at the same time.
Caitlin Clark is back. She just had 32 points. That was crazy. 8 rebounds, 9 assists. I mean, right there, almost having another triple-double. How hard is it or fun is it to play against Cece out there?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't played her this season.
You haven't played her this season. Okay.
No, only had a chance to play her last season. But, I mean, she brings the show, literally with her game and then also with the fans on the road.
And that is what makes her different. Let's start with the obvious one, the range. Clark does not stretch the floor like a normal shooter. She stretches it until the defense looks broken. A normal three-point threat makes you guard the arc. Caitlin makes you guard the parking lot. And that might sound dramatic, but watch the way teams defend her. They are not casually meeting her at the line. They are picking her up high. They are sending extra bodies. They are shading help before she even starts the action.
She's obviously doing amazing. Her game speaks for itself. I think my favorite part is just women's basketball, women's sports really, but women's basketball has been on the rise. And it's kind of like what Magic and Bird was to men's basketball. Like this moment, we kind of needed something.
This is
to
that
just
moment.
And Caitlin's that moment. And I think a lot of it has to do with her logo threes. A lot of, I mean, speaking of John 529 from Twitter,
yeah,
like, oh, women don't dunk.
Yeah.
That's what he sounds like.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, women don't dunk.
Yeah.
That's why I don't watch.
But you can't really talk trash on a logo three.
So a logo three is
deep. That's
deep. That's almost half court where the NBA, where the WNBA logo is. Yeah.
Literally where
and
she's
she just, it's just fact.
Why? Because they know if she gets one clean look from deep, the entire energy of the game can flip. That is the fear factor, and the scariest part is not even the shot itself. It is how fast it comes out of her hands. You can be in decent position and still be late. You can think you have recovered and still watch the ball fly over your fingertips. That is what separates a good shooter from a defensive emergency.
I think in particular, there's been so much attention around Caitlin Clark this season in terms of not just her play and how she's coming back from injury in year 3, but how she's handling some emotional moments in high pressure situations and her leadership. And you know what it's like to be a franchise player. You know what it's like to win. You know what it's like to play at the highest level. What does that development stage look like for a franchise player at that level?
It's tough. It's tough because you're actually a franchise player. You're carrying a franchise. And to be honest, in some ways, she's been, carrying a league. She elevated a lead.
With Clark, there is almost no warning. One dribble, step back, release, and suddenly the defender is turning around hoping the shot misses. But here is where it gets worse. If you crowd her, she is not helpless. She is not just some standstill shooter waiting for a screen. She can put the ball on the floor, force the defense to collapse, and then punish the help with a pass most guards would not even see. That is the trap. Back up, and she shoots. Press up, and she attacks. Send help, and she finds the open player. Stay home, and you leave your defender on an island. There is no comfortable answer. And that is why the Caitlin Clark conversation gets so funny sometimes. Because publicly, you will hear people downplay it. They will say she turns it over too much. They will say she shoots too much. They will say teams have figured her out.
My daughter wants to see her play. She was there with a bunch of her teammates from her rec league team, and all we were watching was Caitlin Clark missing shots. The reason why she was missing shots, I will tell you this. The Sparks treated her like the Pacers and the Sixers treated Jalen Brunson. They picked her up on the floor, all 94 feet. They made every minute of her night an absolute nightmare. They were all over her. There was no way, I mean, and for her to get her shot, she's trying to come off of screens that either weren't working or they honestly, they had two people marking her, it seemed like.
But then you watch the actual games, and the defense tells a completely different story. Teams do not build an entire defensive coverage around a player they are not worried about. They do not pick someone up at three-quarter court for fun. They do not send early help, switch matchups, burn timeouts, and change schemes at halftime because of hype. Defenses tell the truth. And the truth is, the league knows Caitlin Clark bends the floor in a way very few players can. That is the word people need to understand. Gravity. Clark's biggest weapon is not just the points she scores, it is the attention she steals.
But what she was doing, she was dishing. Some of her passes, I know she passed Pistol Pete at the collegiate level as the all-time greatest scorer. Some of her passes looked just, I mean, nice. They were just as crisp, innovative. I didn't see that on the floor. She did type of passes. They were amazing. And to the point where some of her teammates weren't ready for it, or they were, and they're not used to it from her yet. And it would just bounce off their hands and go out of bounds.
When she has the ball, two defenders are thinking about her, sometimes three. Even when she does not shoot, she has already changed the possession. A defender takes one step too high and the lane opens. A help defender leans too far toward her and someone else is free. A big steps up too early and now the roller has space. That is basketball pressure. That is what superstars do. They make the other team defend possibilities, not just actions. And Caitlin has more possibilities than almost anyone. She can shoot from 30. She can hit the roller, she can throw the skip pass, she can push in transition, she can drag two defenders with her and turn a normal possession into a scramble. That is exhausting to guard. And here is the part people do not say enough. Guarding her is not just a physical challenge, it is a mental one. You cannot relax for 1 second. You cannot lose her in transition. You cannot go under a screen. You cannot assume the shot is too deep. You cannot assume the pass is not coming. That kind of pressure wears teams down. Now, to be fair, this does not mean she is perfect. She turns the ball over. That is real. But a lot of those turnovers come from the same thing that makes her dangerous. She attempts passes that most players do not even imagine. Sometimes those passes create layups. Sometimes they fly out of bounds. That is the tax you pay when your offense runs through someone who is constantly trying to break the defense open. Her defense has also been criticized. Physical teams have tried to body her, bump her, speed her up, and make every catch uncomfortable. And yes, that has worked at times. So when I say Caitlin Clark is a nightmare to guard, I am not saying she is unstoppable every night. Nobody is. What I am saying is that stopping her costs too much. You can slow down her shot, but now you're giving up space somewhere else. You can trap her, but now the Fever are playing 4-on-3. You can make her give it up, but now the ball is moving against a tilted defense. That is the nightmare. You might survive the possession, but you rarely get to defend normally. And that is the real compliment. Not the fake quotes, not the over-the-top headlines, not the made-up stories about legends being terrified. The real compliment is the way teams guard her. The game plan is the respect. Because when Caitlin Clark is on the floor, every defender knows one mistake can turn into a highlight. One late closeout, one lazy switch, one step too far under a screen, and the ball is already in the air. That is why she is a nightmare. Not because she is loud, not because she is popular, not because of the media attention, because her skill set forces the entire defense to play scared. So here's the question. If you are an opposing coach, what are you actually doing? Are you selling out to stop the three and living with the assists? Or are you staying home and praying she has an off night? Because either way, you are not really solving Caitlin Clark. You are just choosing how you want her to beat you.
I'm sick of watching Caitlin getting attacked. If the league doesn't step up and protect her, things are going to get ugly real fast.
One of the greatest shooters who has ever lived watched Caitlin Clark play basketball and basically described watching himself.
Her range, her three-point shooting overall, her flair for testing her range every night and knowing that the other team's going to try to take it away. And she's fearless. No shot is a bad shot, and when you can shoot it as well as she can. She just adds another element of surprise that you can't really game plan for because it's so kind of just unseen. And once she crosses half court, she's within her range. It's always a threat. Biggest thing is how she balances that and her playmaking ability to get everybody else involved.
No fake mic grab, no live TV meltdown, no made-up drama. The real story is much better than that, because when Stephen Curry talks about Caitlin Clark, he does not sound like someone just being polite. He sounds like someone who recognizes part of his own game in another player. And that matters, because Steph Curry is not just a great shooter, he is the shooter who changed basketball forever. He changed where defenders have to pick players up. He made the logo 3 feel normal. He made every kid in a gym think they could pull up from ridiculous range. So when Curry looks at Caitlin Clark and says her release is basically identical to his, that is not just a nice compliment. That is a basketball earthquake.
Somebody break down the release time, which is pretty much identical to mine. And then her just confidence, you can't help but watch when she plays, where she's shooting from, the range, the confidence, the flair, like she's a performer.
Think about what he is really saying. He is not only talking about the distance, he is talking about the speed, the rhythm, the confidence, the way the ball is gone before the defense can even react. That is what makes Clark different. And that is why the Curry comparison hits so hard, because nobody understands that kind of shooting better than Steph Curry. He knows how hard it is to shoot from deep. He knows how hard it is to do it under pressure. He knows what it feels like when defenses are built around stopping you before you even cross half court. So when Curry praises Caitlin Clark, he is not just saying she can shoot. He is saying, I know exactly how hard this is.
There's been a lot of talk about Caitlin Clark being an amazing shooter and just someone we're watching. Have you spoken to her? Do you know her? What do you think?
I've been watching from afar and understanding just how much of a power she is out there on the court. The cool part is the way that she plays and her range and the level of difficulty on her shots is obviously a very close comparison to the way that I play.
I was going to say Caitlin Clark's been compared to you.
Yeah, but I think it almost robs her of like the rest of her game because she's such a good floor, she has her overall, floor game. She's racking up, close to triple doubles every night, and her shooting ability is, it's her superpower, but the rest of her game is as polished as that. And so it's must-see TV. I love what it is done for, women's basketball in terms of when she shows up, the seats are filled.
And that is why his words carry more weight than almost anyone else's. Analysts can debate her. Critics can call her overrated. Talking heads can argue about hype, ratings, attention, and media coverage. But when the greatest shooter ever looks at Caitlin Clark and sees something familiar, people should probably listen, because Caitlin Clark is not dangerous only because she can shoot from deep. She is dangerous because the threat of that shot changes everything. The defense has to stretch, help defenders hesitate, passing lanes open, teammates get easier looks. The whole floor changes because one player has to be guarded from places where most players would never even think about shooting.
He was shooting, letting that ball fly. I watched a little bit. but then I had to do some treatment. So, but it was amazing. I watched the first half, but she got to go in the second half, so I didn't watch that. She can shoot it better than me.
That is the Curry effect, and Clark has her own version of it. That is the real connection between them. Not fake drama, not a viral lie, not some headline about Steph grabbing a microphone. The real story is two players connected by the same basketball idea. Range changes everything. Confidence changes everything. Fearless shooting changes everything. And the respect goes both ways. Caitlin Clark has never hidden how much she admires Steph Curry. She has talked about loving his game. She has talked about the influence he had on her style. And when she was asked which NBA player she would want to play one-on-one, she gave the perfect answer. She basically said she would get killed by every NBA player, but she picked Steph Curry anyway.
If you could play one-on-one with anybody, current, not current, who would it be?
That's a fantastic question. Current or not current?
NBA, WNBA.
Well, like, I would get killed by every NBA player, but like Steph Curry.
You would play one-on-one with Steph Curry. I thought you were gonna say Peyton Pritchard.
That's great. Peyton Pritchard. Yes.
That answer is funny, but it also tells you the truth. Curry is not just another superstar to her. He is the blueprint.
You know, I grew up watching Steph. Like, to me, he's one of the greatest basketball players of all time. But I was also a kid that grew up getting to watch him, and I think he's really changed the way basketball is being played. Maybe at times, me and him both, like, kids shouldn't always just go and chuck a bunch of threes, but that's what makes the game so exciting and what he's been able to do throughout his career. He's really changed basketball, and, you know, everybody that's ever met him knows how good of a person he is too. So it's cool to be here. Like, he's somebody I certainly idolize.
The freedom to shoot from anywhere. The freedom to turn a normal possession into a moment. The freedom to make the crowd stand up before the ball even leaves your hands. That is what Clark grew up watching. And now Curry is watching her do her own version of it. That is why this is bigger than a compliment. It feels like basketball lineage. Steph Curry changed what was possible in the men's game. Caitlin Clark is helping change what is possible in the women's game. Different leagues, different journeys, different pressure, but the same kind of gravity, the same panic from defenses, the same feeling that something wild can happen the second the ball touches their hands. And here is my hot take. The Steph Curry cosign might be the most important endorsement Caitlin Clark has ever received. Not because Curry is famous, not because it makes a good headline, but because he is the perfect person to judge the exact thing that makes her special. When a random commentator says Clark has deep range, that is an opinion. When Steph Curry says her release reminds him of his own, that hits different. That is the master of the craft recognizing the same pattern in someone else. And that makes the overrated debate look lazy, because people can argue about the attention, they can argue about the media, they can argue about the fan base, but the basketball is right there. The range is real, the passing is real, the pressure she puts on defenses is real, and now the greatest shooter ever has basically said he sees it too. But let's be clear, praise from Steph Curry is not a trophy, it is not a championship, it is not an MVP. It does not mean Caitlin Clark has already reached the top. She still has to build the rest of her career. She still has to keep improving. She still has to handle the traps, the double teams, the physicality, the bad nights, and the pressure that comes with being the biggest name in the league. Curry's praise is not the finish line. It is a signpost. It tells you what her ceiling could be. It tells you that what people are seeing is not imaginary. It tells you that one of the smartest shooters in basketball history watched her and understood why she feels different. So forget the fake mic grab story. The real Steph Curry and Caitlin Clark connection is better. It is about respect, influence, skill, and one revolutionary shooter tipping his cap to another player who is changing the way the game is watched. So now I want to know what you think. Is the Curry comparison fair, or is the bar still too high? And at the same stage of their careers, who was the better pure shooter? Drop your answer in the comments.
Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark went to battle today with the Atlanta Dream taking on the Indiana Fever. As you can see right here, Angel Reese, got called for a foul on Caitlin Clark flopping. Angel Reese smiling, let people know about it. She also did a little bit of mocking there.
Every time Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese share the same floor, the internet does not just react. It explodes. One hard foul becomes a conspiracy. One stare becomes disrespect. One camera angle becomes evidence. Suddenly, everyone online acts like they just watched the biggest scandal in basketball.
Last night, the Indiana Fever went up against Angel Reese in the Atlanta Dream. Caitlin Clark debuting her new shoe, her signature shoe, the Caitlin Ones. Last night would have been a night where if you really had your teammates back, if you had your players back as a coach, you step up. You rise to the occasion. You play inspired. You give effort defensively. You don't look lackadaisical.
But here is the truth. That is what the machine wants. Because Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese is real. The tension is real. The history is real. But a lot of what gets built around it is not real at all. It is rage bait.
About the foul baiting as well. Tonight, Angel Reese went off for 21, 11, 1 assist. She did so on 57% shooting. Caitlin Clark, 26.7 assists, 2 rebounds, but 5 turnovers and a minus 12 plus minus as well. Also, Angel Reese right now, the only player in the W to be averaging 15 plus points and 12 rebounds. She's actually the only person averaging a 15-point double-double right now in the W. Performing really, really well in year 3 here is Angel Reese.
Today, we need to separate the real rivalry from the fake drama. And the craziest part is, they do not need to fake anything. The real story is big enough. This exploded in the 2023 National Championship. LSU versus Iowa. Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark. Reese's team wins the title. The cameras catch Reese doing the "you can't see me" gesture toward Clark, the same gesture Clark had used earlier in the tournament. And then Reese points to her ring finger. That one moment lit the fuse.
And Angel Reese knows a ring is coming.
Overnight, the country split into sides. Some called it confidence. Some called it disrespect. The conversation became personal. It became ugly. And the internet learned one dangerous thing. Clark plus Reese equals clicks. Then they both enter the WNBA, and the rivalry scales up. Now it is the pros. It is national television. Every possession gets slowed down, zoomed in, circled in red, and turned into evidence. A hard box out becomes disrespect. A foul becomes targeting. A look after a bucket becomes beef. A quote gets chopped up and pushed out like a declaration of war. That is where fans need to stop and ask one question. What actually happened? Because here is what is real. Clark does not want to lose to Reese. Reese does not want to lose to Clark. That is not hatred. That is sports.
I don't owe Angel Reese an apology. I've always thought Angel Reese was a really good player. She was going to do one thing at a high level when she got drafted, and that was rebound. And she's done that. What she has done is kind of shut a lot of people up, because it was plenty of people that were saying she can't score in the WNBA. She's not going to be able to get buckets in the WNBA. And she's worked on her game. She's improved her offensive game. And if it was this easy, other players would be doing what she's doing.
Yeah.
They would all be getting double-doubles, and they can't. And so you got to give her credit. She went out and worked on her game, because coming out of college, it was, she's not going to be able to score in the WNBA. You shouldn't get some rebounds.
When Indiana and Chicago meet, the intensity jumps. Bodies hit the floor. Rebounds get fought for. Every loose ball feels bigger than one regular season game. And the contrast is real. Clark is the long-range storm. She bends the defense from 30 feet away. Reese is the force on the glass. She lives in the paint, fights for position, and turns missed shots into extra possessions. One creates panic with range. The other creates pressure with physicality. And the impact is real too. When these two are involved, people watch, argue, buy tickets, and suddenly know the schedule. That is growth happening in real time. But now we need to talk about what is not real. The mind reading, the fake quotes, the thumbnails screaming that one of them destroyed the other, the videos claiming one player exposed the other because of a 3-second clip with no audio. This is how the rage bait machine works. Somebody finds a clip. Maybe it is a hard foul. Maybe it is a normal collision. Maybe it is just two players standing near each other after a whistle. Then they freeze the most dramatic frame. They add a red arrow. They add one giant word like attacked, mocked, or humiliated. Then they invent the emotion. They tell you Clark was furious. They tell you Reese was laughing. They tell you somebody was jealous, bitter, scared, exposed, or embarrassed. But when you actually watch the full clip, sometimes nothing happened. No quote, no confrontation, no scandal, just basketball. And by the time anyone checks, it is too late. 10 other channels copy it. A fake quote gets repeated like it is confirmed. A normal foul becomes a personal attack. Millions of people walk away believing they saw something that never actually happened. That is the dangerous part. Attention is good for the league. Emotion is part of sports. The problem is when fans stop watching the game and start watching edited evidence packages designed to make them angry. So here is the rule. If someone says Reese said something, show the clip. If someone says Clark reacted, show the footage. If someone says there was an incident, show the full play. Not one screenshot, not a red circle, not dramatic music. The proof. Because this rivalry does not need fake fuel. It is already fire. And honestly, that is my biggest take. The people inventing extra drama are not making Clark versus Reese bigger. They are making it cheaper. They are taking two of the most important athletes in the sport and flattening them into cartoon characters. Clark becomes the hero, Reese becomes the villain, or depending on the channel, the roles flip. But real life is not that simple. Caitlin Clark is a killer competitor. Angel Reese is a high-level player, a competitor, a personality, and someone who understands that attention is part of the business. That is what makes this compelling. Not fake hatred. Real tension, real history, real contrast, real stakes. They do not need to be friends. Rivalries are built on stakes. They are built on the feeling that when these two players share the court, something bigger is happening. And Clark versus Reese has that. When they play, it matters. So the next time you see a thumbnail screaming that one of them snapped, mocked, attacked, or destroyed the other, ask one question. Where is the proof? Because the real Clark versus Reese story is not boring. But the fake version is just people selling you anger because they know you will click. So enjoy the rivalry. Pick your side. Argue in the comments. But do not let somebody trick you into believing a feud they had to invent. Watch the game. Watch the full clip. So let me know below, is Clark versus Reese good for the league, or has the media already pushed it too far? Like the video if you want the real story without the fake outrage. Subscribe for the next one, and I will see you in the next video.